Happening now. We'd like to welcome our viewers from across North America and around the world. This is the EdTech Situation Room, episode 327 for May the 22nd, 2024. My name is Wes Fryer, and I'm coming to you from Charlotte, North Carolina, where I am a middle school STEM and media literacy teacher at Providence Day School. And joining me as always, just recently returning from the land of the rising sun. I think that's what they call Japan, right? It is Dr. Jason Neiffer, EdTech guru of the North. How is life in Missoula today, Jason?
Good evening, Dr. Fryer. It's pretty good. It's been really rainy here since I got back, but we need the moisture, so I'm definitely not going to complain about that. It's funny, we spent just 2 days in Hiroshima, Japan, and it was wonderful. We got a chance to visit the Peace Park and go to the museums and the pieces of kind of tourist infrastructure around the World War II atomic bomb drop. And as it turns out, it rained like epically the full day we were there. Like, we came back to the apartment that night after walking around all day, and we were both soaked all the way through, and I took all of our clothes off and hung them up to dry. They were dripping at one point. And I told my wife, that's like, I don't think I've ever had a day of rain like this. And sure enough, I come home, it's been dumping rain here for like 6 days. So I think perhaps I very momentarily control the weather. So yeah, it's certainly different than it was when I left, when snow was still dropping a little bit here and there. So there's a huge snowstorm while I was gone, but spring is definitely here.
Oh my gosh. Well, it does look like it's going to be a wild weather one. I've been watching predictions for the number of storms. I saw today that something's spinning up in May. Our son and daughter-in-law are in Houston, and they had almost 1 million people without power, I think, last week, and they still don't have everyone restored from tornado outbreaks. So it's just wild weather. But I'm glad to hear you're getting rain. What you really needed was snowpack, I guess, to feel confident.
Yes, yeah, totally. It is going to help some of the early or late spring planting and such. But yeah, it could be a rough summer here, and I know that I think most people in the West are keeping a close eye on the weather this year, because a fiery summer is an unpleasant one.
Yeah, and I know that thunderstorms and things like that are not always, they bring rain, but they also bring lightning. On a technical note, did I freeze? I've had weird something happen with my side monitor or whatever, but was I frozen there for a little bit, or was that?
Oh, no, actually, you continue to broadcast.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good. I really need to just ditch this 2013 27-inch iMac and just get a new monitor. So anyway, I'm glad that wasn't disrupted. Well, what are we about to do tonight for the 327th time?
Well, we're going to take a look at news headlines from across the techosphere and try to see if we can shoot them through an educational prism, with the idea that we can provide some insight for those that are also working their way through these issues. And I just took a quick look at the rundown tonight, and it appears that we have our typical topics that we'll dive deep into. Of course, we have some AI news that continues to dominate headlines. There was Google I/O last week, which announced a lot of pretty wild things. Microsoft also had an event earlier this week that announced some pretty wild things. We will be also taking a look at gaming, and then we'll end our night tonight on the Geeks of the Week. And I have to apologize for my dog, Lou, who usually he's in another part of the house, but my wife is gone tonight, and so it's pet dad that's subbing in, and so far it's not going so hot. So I will try to mute when the dog is barking.
Lou is ready to participate fully in the EdTech Situation Room tonight. So, all right. Well, I'm flipping around a little bit here. Where would you like to start, sir?
Let's go ahead and do the non-AI news, which most of it's AI news anyways. So let's start with a couple of stories that really have nothing to do with AI. You want to talk about that social media post?
Let's see. Sure. Oh man, this is the just security. So I had not heard of this source. This is from justsecurity.org. The headline, and this is from May 4th, was Key January 6th Instigator Nick Fuentes, Reinstatement on Twitter X, The Implications. And in the spirit of sifting and using our media literacy skills, this article is by Tom Jocelyn and Jacob Glick. And at the bottom of the article, so we're not lateral reading here, but we're just going with what they have provided. Tom Jocelyn is a senior fellow at Just Security. He was a senior professional staff member on the House Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. Jacob Glick is policy counsel with Institute for Constitutional Advocacy at Georgetown, and he was also investigative counsel on that House Select Committee. And so the bottom line to this is that I think if you have not discontinued using Twitter, I don't know if I'm not sure what would persuade you to stop using it, because this article in really, deep detail goes through the things that this fellow, Nick Fuentes, who is a white supremacist and did all kinds of things to galvanize and organize the supporters of the former president who stormed our nation's capital and participated in an insurrection. He, was given the privilege to get back on Twitter and be able to share whatever he would like to. And I think that the ethical aspects of the environment that we're living in are very important. All of us have to make our own decisions about things, but sometimes you'll just hear somebody's name and you'll hear a label, in this case, like white supremacist, and you may not really know what that means, but this article really gives a lot of detail to that, and it just seems ridiculous that folks like this are being replatformed on the website formerly known as Twitter. So I had not heard about this Just Security, and this is, they say it's a forum for democracy, foreign policy, and rights. And certainly social media is playing a key and important role in all this. And I think the individual, as well as the combined collective decisions that we make in terms of our uses of social media platforms are important. And so I just wanted to share that article because I think it really makes a persuasive case for why folks should consider leaving the platform if they haven't already.
Well, and I would comment that, I will say that I've been tempted to get back on Twitter, in part because there's just not the back and forth on any other platform that existed, 2 years ago on Twitter. And I know a lot of EdTech people have stayed on there. I don't exactly know why. And to be honest, I felt like the platform, even in the early Elon Musk days, was starting to really deteriorate pretty quickly. Not just the replatforming of people that have been previously booted, but some of the features they were trying to push, and they were trying to make some fundamental changes to the app, and I didn't like those changes. Like it felt like it diminished the experience for me, and I also was pretty annoyed that that nonprofit organizations are going to be charged $1,000 a year to get it wasn't even about getting the check mark. It was about even getting like access to extended posts, right? Longer posts, which I think makes some sense in context of that particular platform. And to be very frank, that none of those business decisions, I felt like added value to me as an end user for Twitter. But, we haven't congregated on another platform. I don't go to Threads. I don't go to Blue Sky. I do spend some time on LinkedIn, which there is good conversation going on about AI there. However, I'm followed by a lot of folks that that I don't necessarily want to expose an informal conversation on LinkedIn. I do feel like I put my tie on for LinkedIn posts. I think most of my board that I report to follows me there. And although I don't think I would say anything that, in fact, I don't say anything that would be a problem there, because I consider that to be a professional platform. And where Twitter, you can have even a productive argument. It's harder to have when you're limited to 280 characters, but still, you can have a productive argument with folks and do interesting do interesting things there that you just can't do anywhere else. And so I do feel very disconnected from the education community because of it, other than the folks I'm back and forth with on LinkedIn. But it's just a sad state of affairs, in my humble opinion.
So a couple thoughts about that. Number one, I think that and I haven't really done this much. I saw that Blue Sky actually acquired or started to have direct messages today, which is good. Or if it wasn't today, it was like recently in the last week. I totally agree. We do not have a platform that has replaced Twitter. I personally do not think we are going to have a platform that is going to replace Twitter. I think that the fractured nature of our information environment is going to be persistent for the foreseeable future. I don't see a change in it. I am regularly using Blue Sky and Mastodon and Threads, as well as Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram. I used AI actually a number of months ago to write this little JavaScript that I use frequently, which takes a post that I want to write and it breaks it into chunks depending upon the specific requirements of that platform. There was an app I used to use that was taken off of the App Store, and I was absolutely thrilled to be able to create a JavaScript program that is functional that I literally use basically every single day. My thought is that there's a benefit to having less of the society writ large on platforms and to have more early adopters. I wish that I could share my Mastodon lists, because there are a number of journalists that I follow there on a list, and I need to play with that a little more, because there's probably a way to at least share those in a different form. Twitter did lists and still does so well, because you make your list, you make it available, people can follow it, see everybody who's on it. Like it's pretty awesome. I am thinking that and I say we, the early adopter EdTech community, should do some more professional development and teaching about these other platforms to encourage adoption. I think that there's a number of people who are understandably frustrated, as you're expressing some frustration that, the new Twitter hasn't emerged and we don't see where everyone is sort of migrated to such and such. In my closing day of classes, because we're wrapping up this week, it's our last week, and we've moved into this phase we call capstone. So we're done with regular classes for the whole academic year, which is amazing. But in the last class I had with several of my classes, I actually talked to them about the Fediverse. And for the kids that had taken web design with me, we had talked a lot about HTML and about standards and how no one owns that, and the birth of the web and some of those kinds of things. And I think at this point, and I could obviously be wrong, that the Fediverse really offers our best hope of, number one, an advertisement-free environment. It's a little complicated because you do have to pick a server, and it's it's not as easy, certainly, to be following big headliners, and it's just different than Twitter. But anyway, that's something that I hadn't really thought of a lot, as we often do when we kick ideas around and stuff. Sometimes new ideas will come to mind, and so maybe just like we saw during the EdCamp times when that was popular, there would almost always be a Twitter 101, and people are trying to help other teachers get online and learn about that. Maybe we should be trying to do that kind of outreach to help educate folks, because I personally just don't think we're going to have a critical mass of society all get on one platform, but I actually think there's some real benefit to that. And part of the dumpster fire that's become Twitter, I just don't think we should have our ecosystem that we use for vital communication. And Twitter is still important. We've got all kinds of, government officials, government organizations. I saw, I think, some articles that were citing, the National Weather Service or some other meteorologists that are using Twitter. We got severe weather in the Midwest. We need ways to rapidly get information out. And so Twitter is definitely still being used. But anyway, I think that there is a case to be made to help our, let's say local representatives, news organizations. I don't know, maybe just to even get out of the EdTech circle, to be able to look at some of these platforms and how to use them. because yeah, I just I don't see anything that gives me quote hope that suddenly blue sky. But I'll say this: it is absolutely fantastic to get on Ice Cube, is what I'm using, or whatever Mastodon app. I use different ones. There's not a single advertisement in it. I mean, that is just beautiful. And, the ways in which Facebook and Instagram have both, I since really ramped up their advertisement. I'm seeing a lot more sponsored posts, amidst, friends and people that I follow. I just don't see another platform out there that offers that. And just like emails federated, in the Fediverse, your social media identity is federated. And so you can use the client that you want and be completely ad free. So anyway.
Yeah, and I would say the advertising piece is still a big question mark, right? Because I think that a lot of social media platforms are fearing AI and what it could do to both the content on their systems, but also the where people spend their digital eyeball time. And if and since people are moving away from a lot of these platforms in part because they don't like what it does for them, or they don't have a positive relationship with it, then it means they have to make more off the rest of us that are using it, and that's going to be more advertising. Of course, there's diminishing returns with that, but not Instagram, Twitter is every fifth post now is an ad. And and again, I know that they specifically worked to not to avoid third-party applications, in part because they want to be able to deliver more advertising. But it's pretty frustrating to get access to so many ads. And I also think they don't feel very targeted either. And I know that's a mixed blessing because of personal data, but I kind of like ad targeting in some way, shape, or form, because I'm not really in the market for a Buick, as it turns out.
Here's a quick story about that that's a little funny. So my wife has really started to enjoy doing yoga and exercise with a YouTuber, and so more often than has been in the past, on our Apple TV in our living room, she's got her YouTube channel on. Well, she is seeing ads for bras all the time. Which I never see, and it's irritating to her, and she would like to change that. But one of the things that I've heard some people express in terms of data privacy and data protection, and I'll do a shout out to the EFF, the Electronic Frontier Foundation's. I think it's How to Save the Internet. I've listened to their podcast a little bit more of late, and one of the things that some of their commentators have talked about is how we should have some control over these algorithms, and that we should also have some visibility into them. I don't know that we're going to talk a lot about the TikTok ban at this point, but one of the issues there with the TikTok ban is, we don't have any insight really at all into the algorithm of TikTok and how it's being used, how it could possibly be, used in ways that is not only influencing the minds of our youth, but swaying elections, all kinds of things. But that's also true for most social media algorithms, and so the ability to affect and train your algorithm is important. So I don't know. I may sit down and try to help my wife see if she can go into some of her, Google ad preferences and things, because there are some things that you can go in and do in terms of telling Google the kinds of things that you want to see or don't see. And so it may be possible to control that. But, and we're going to get into the AI stuff with Google and what they announced at I/O, because it's a real Wild West as far as what's going to happen with ad revenue and with search. I mean, such a basic part of the entire internet. So I think one of the lessons here is we've also got to keep learning, right? As teachers, as folks that want to be connected to other people who are passionate about the things we're passionate about, seeking to be innovative, seeking to be informed. It's a moving target with social media. So I'm glad that LinkedIn is a forum that you're enjoying, because I frequently will see articles and things like that you've looked at that we end up talking about during the week. But it is important to try and get a pulse of sort of the dynamic and I don't know, I mean, I'm even saying the right words, but every social media platform is not the same, and the conversations that are there, the affordances there, the way in which you probably want to project yourself, is different. And I think the only way that you really get to learn that is by, playing with the tools, as well as connecting to folks that you trust who have used the tools more than you have. So
yeah, totally. Well, that took a longer amount of time. That's a complex topic.
that was one article. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Should we do the gaming article and then we can hop into AI?
Sure. Yeah, this one can be a little faster. This is kind of a wild one. This is from 404 Media on May 9th, and it's titled Roblox Community Protests Communism Update. We've talked about this a little bit on the show before in the context of gaming, how Roblox has been controversial in part because they have their own economic system where they set the essentially exchange rate for their currencies. And so the controversy here is that they decided to reward basic fishermen the same as someone who is delivering pizza or whatever. Anyway, but it led to this protest where they were being accused of communism, and folks that were upset at the exchange rate. And I just thought it was a very kind of sign of the times thing that here we have this virtual world, which, by the way, research still shows over half of American youth in the United States are on the platform Roblox, which is enormous. That this kind of thing was going on. I think it's just super important that we continue to talk about these issues and try to get our legislative bodies to move on privacy regulation. Again, I think it was from How to Save the Internet from the EFF. One of their episodes recently was talking about how, these platforms for minors should be defaulting to the most private settings and not have, open chat available and things like that. So it's just an interesting article about Roblox. I will say, as a cautionary tale, we definitely need to be very careful when we share articles with students. 404 Media, I think, is a very reputable source, but I mean, they cover all kinds of things. And so, sort of like with YouTube, where you don't have control over related videos and things like that, it's while 404 Media is an excellent adult source. There was other articles about things that I would say would not be appropriate to share with students. So while this is a topic that's engaging to them, I wouldn't go, sharing this article directly with your middle schoolers or your elementary kids.
An important notice to our listeners.
All right. So lots of AI things remain. Oh my gosh.
Well, let's start with
20 articles.
Google, then Microsoft, because I think that they both offer a different approach. And I was a little pushed back by the article from Microsoft. So let's start Google first. And Wes, do you want to grab that?
Sure. So The Verge usually does a nice job with live blogs and then also summaries. So this is The Verge's article from May 14th, Google I/O 2024, everything announced. And there's a video that you can watch that is 17 minutes long. And I don't know if I've lost enthusiasm. At one point, Jason, I was thinking that the dream sort of meetup for us would be to go there for Google and be there for I/O. I don't know. I still think it would be cool. The number one thing, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff, but the number one thing that they talked about, I think, has to do with the way in which these AI summaries are what they're. I saw an extension, by the way, today that lets you block all those. You can go back to the old Google, but they are embracing AI and putting these AI summaries. And the great fear that a lot of people have that have been talking about I/O in these announcements is that Google is fundamentally changing, search engine optimization and the nature of the web. And also it's their bottom line, right? They are most profitable selling ads in a whole variety of ways. And people continue, Google's over 20 years old. they continue to really struggle to be on that first set of hit results. And one of the best summaries, I don't know that it was in this Verge article that I heard of this, is, in Star Trek, when Captain Picard or whoever says, computer, what is the da-da-da? It never says, well, the top 10 results are this. Which one would you like me to click on? It just gives you the answer. And so like the Perplexity AI platform that is seeking to do this without hallucination, but to do it accurately, Google is seeking to do that with search. So, allowing you to, I don't know. I'll stop there. That was the thing that stood out the most. There's a whole lot of other things, as there always are for these kinds of events. So any comments about that or other things that were really standouts for you in terms of their announcements?
Yeah, to kind of make that point, they released a blog post that was 100 things we announced at Google I/O, which, I mean, and I get that part of what they wanted to do was reframe the conversation to say that Google is not behind on AI. And I think that I don't know, it does feel like that Google is acting like a not market leader right now. And I don't think they're as far behind as people that are maybe wringing their hands about Google think that they are. And more importantly, I do know that search is at risk, right? Like there's no doubt in my mind about that. And in fact, one of the things that and I was trying to find the articles that I read while I was on vacation, but there were a couple of great analysis articles that talked about how we probably don't want generative AI to replace search engines. That there's something
certainly not yet. I mean, with all the hallucinations and mistakes,
Yeah.
I mean, no, not yet.
Totally. And I think that we want to be extra thoughtful about replacing whole categories of things 25 years after search engines started becoming useful and really the core of discovery on the internet. But that said, Google can rely on its products, right? And in general, I mean, a lot of people have some very mixed notions about what Google is and isn't, but Gemini's become a lot better in the last couple of weeks, and they rolled out for pro users their 1.5 Gemini 1.5 model, which has a million token context, which is like 1,500 pages of books or context information. I've been working on some experiments with AI, and I certainly did those on vacation. I got on the Japanese bullet train and made my way around Japan. And they had pretty terrible Wi-Fi, but it was free and good enough to use AI tools. And I continue with my experiments on my 2 or 3 hour train rides up and down the country, which was, by the way, amazing. The 270-mile-an-hour trains are pretty cool. But and I also recommend, if you're a nerd, go to the Kyoto Railroad Museum. If you're not a nerd, like my wife, you might just sit in the nice open park next to it and wait for your nerd husband to get done looking at the trains. But the Gemini model does a really good job at analyzing long text, and you can now upload all sorts of things to it. When they pushed out their updates last week, it's much more functional than it was before. They now have an Android app that's pretty great, and it does a pretty good job of, doing a lot of that data processing stuff. And since it's plugged in to the Google ecosystem, that little Gemini icon that appears in Sheets and in Docs and in Slides and in Gmail it's a really effective tool to be an AI assistant. I am looking forward to what it does to the Google Assistant. I did recently have the opportunity to trade in my side phone, which is an Android phone, for a newer version, basically for free, and I did, and so now I have the latest Pixel 8a. And it's supposed to have at some point with Android 15 a nano version of Gemini right on the device, and I'm curious to see what that does. And again, I get annoyed at the narrative that Google's dead. I do think their market is going to be challenged really substantially for sure, but at the same time, I do think they're making good progress in AI.
100 things they announced. How can we possibly scratch the surface? But Sora was the AI video creation tool that OpenAI announced. I think it was now a couple months ago. Maybe it was last week, but No, it was just recently this semester. And Google has announced Veo, which is going to be similar Sora style video generation. Oh my gosh. I don't know. There's a whole lot of things that are sort of mind blowing. Some of the assistant stuff and the different ways in which these assistants are being, developed and marketed and sold is very science fiction like. But being able to have access to prompt engineering to video is fairly mind blowing, and I don't know that any of us are adequately ready and thinking about what this world looks like when anyone who can be descriptive is able to generate a video, talk about a Harry Potter world, and you can even speak it, write it however you want to create that prompt. And like I've been using ideogram a lot more because of your recommendation, and that magic prompt feature where it takes your prompt and then uses AI to make it even better. You can toggle that on or off. I mean, it's just mind blowing. So yeah, I would agree that you can definitely sense the heat that OpenAI and ChatGPT has brought to Google, I think, in their entire event. But this is Google, and there's a lot of very smart people that are here. The thing is, no one knows how this is all going to play out. And in terms of an innovator dilemma, if Google was going to really fall prey to that, they wouldn't be rushing so quickly with their sort of bread and butter product, which is search, into the AI world. And so I don't know. It does seem like it's a bit premature, but we're not going to, they're not doing away with traditional search yet. There's just a whole lot of experimentation that's going on. And of course, these tools are going to get better. So I think there is an inevitability to this, right? Because if you or I can ask our computer a question and get a really awesome answer 99% of the time, like that sounds like a winner. And that's what Google and these companies are betting on, is that the days of 10 search results and, hey kids, make sure you scroll to page 3 and don't just stay on the first page. People aren't going to be scrolling. And so what that does to media and the news and publications, what that does to advertising writ large, all these things are really open questions. I'm really excited to see what Apple's going to announce, because I don't know if we've got articles about this, but the rumors are that Apple is cutting a deal with ChatGPT and OpenAI directly. And I mean, to be able to bring that into smart devices and to the iPhone, and to do a lot more on board and privacy anyway. I predict that within not too many weeks, and June is when WWDC happens, there's going to be some exciting things. We've known that Apple's going to make a move here. They're not just going to watch all this happen and not, move with AI. And so I think we're going to have some significant announcements this summer, and I hope that they're going to be really good, because the maturity of ChatGPT, it's not. I've still had cases, especially with coordinates and Minecraft and some of the conversion things I'm doing. Claude continues to be better for me for some of those things, but for so much, OpenAI. Are you still paying for ChatGPT? Because now that it's free, and we haven't gotten to that article yet, but I'm still paying because I've got my custom GPTs, and I think I still want to continue to build those. But are you?
Yeah, I absolutely am. And part of it is that my understanding of the free version of 4.0, and we'll jump to that in a couple minutes, it is severely limited on how much you can use it. And
Right.
I'm already running into the limitations with the paid version, which apparently is 4 times the amount. And when I'm sitting down and doing really like real work with AI, so I'm getting something done, I'm working on a project, I have 10 windows open and 3 monitors, and I'm deep in something. And you can kind of smell the productivity in the room. Not a great smell, but still, it's you can smell it. I run into limitations. And in fact, I was just having this conversation with an AI interested colleague of mine today that in fact, I ran into this when I was working on my side projects in Japan. That I ran up against both the OpenAI and Claude and Gemini limit in the same hour because I was pushing all three of them pretty hard. And so I was obviously doing something pretty intense to do that. But I use I use ChatGPT enough that I think I would continue to pay for it. The couple of tools that I'm in fact, I'm glad you mentioned this particular thing, is there's this thing I had to do tonight. I had something weird happen last week. While I was gone, there was a meeting that's on my calendar that I don't usually attend, and my personal Otter AI jumped into that meeting while I was not there. And
what?
So some folks,
so that it could record what was happening.
Record what was happening, right?
Oh
So it was a meeting that it was a there are good people in there, right? Like these are friends, and so the folks that were hosting the meeting asked the other members of my staff, like, did Jason intentionally send in an AI bot to listen to this conversation? And they're like, I can't imagine he would do that.
Wow.
So they immediately contacted me, and I said, oh yeah, that's weird and creepy. And what I figured out was that it is my personal Otter account, but also my personal Otter account can see my work calendar, because my personal calendar has both on there, because that's what I look at on my phone. And so weird, right? But Otter I'm going to get rid of. I'm pretty close to getting rid of my subscription to Poe.com. And that, I mean, it's nice because it does give me access to other pay for models that I otherwise wouldn't want to pay for. But I also am probably going to get rid of my Midjourney account as well. So, because I just use Ideogram now. Ideogram is better than Midjourney, in my humble opinion.
And when I run into some of these guardrails around polarization and the things that the ChatGPT specifically doesn't want to touch, I haven't run into any, and I'm not like red teaming Ideogram, but I am asking it to do things about, politics and polarization and things like that.
Yeah.
And so anyway, wow.
Pretty wild, huh?
That is crazy about Otter joining. That's like a futuristic something in a movie,
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, to your bot, without authorization, but actually, I guess it did have calendar access, assumes that, Jason would want me to join this meeting so that I can record what's happening.
And now that I'm looking into it, I'm getting into Otter right now. One of the things that allowing Otter see and download any calendar you can access using Google Calendar. And it's like, why are you doing this? Like, without any permission from me. And I was just going to go in to see if there are any random recordings sitting in there, but it not super great, as it turns out. And I think that, I guess, you just want to be super careful with stuff, right? Like I think that why is it asking me all this crap? But I just think you want to be, if you're a startup in the space that's causing so much anxiety amongst people, don't do dumb things, and that would qualify for me.
And this is a good story to document too. I don't know if you're doing that. I think because I'm copying you with the idea, like I'm keeping this Google Doc of stories, and I'm not writing down every AI story. But to me, that definitely sounds like a notable one to record it and document.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, do you want to do the Microsoft stuff before we jump up to the formal AI? Although the Microsoft stuff is connected to AI.
Yeah. So let me start with the thing.
You are abandoning all platforms and going straight for Windows with these new announcements. That's what you're saying.
Although if I can get a hold of one of these new Surface devices, I think I probably would play with it. Maybe UM is a big Microsoft client, and so we might be able to get one at the corporate discount to play around with. But they announced several things that are kind of worthy of talking about. One of them is that there is new PCs that will be available very soon that are called Copilot Plus PCs, and that they are interesting because all of them, and they're from a variety of manufacturers, including Microsoft itself, right? So Lenovo has one. I think I saw maybe HP had one, but all of these share something, at least this first generation of these share one really interesting phenomenon, which is they're all powered by ARM processors. And so that's something that is a very, 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 very new piece, because Windows has been trying for literally a decade or more to make kind of ARM processors happen. The battery savings, and in a lot of ways, I think you could argue that there's been a lot more progress in the development of ARM processors than there have been in kind of the Wintel system. Witness, Apple moving away from Intel and going to its own Apple-made chip. But the bottom line is that these are promised to be wicked fast laptops and tablets. They're supposed to beat the Mac M3 chip. No word about the M4 chip, but it's supposed
As
to
an
be
ARM. Wow.
yeah. Which the Apple chip is an ARM chip too, right? Or at least it's an ARM architecture based. But the battery life is really where that might be the real power there, because they're talking about 24-hour battery life on some of these devices, and a lot more like a tablet than anything else. So that's interesting, and I'll admit that I'm vaguely curious. My other assumption, though, is that one of the problems with the last generation of ARM processors, with Windows 10 and Windows 11, was that it didn't do a very good job of running legacy applications. And for better or for worse, Windows runs on a lot of legacy applications, especially when it comes to big business corporations, large IT implementations. So that's interesting, but and that might be enough to actually get me to experiment with one of those. But then they introduced all sorts of really, really interesting AI plays, and there's a couple of them that are particularly interesting. One of them is referred to as recall, and let me describe it, and then I'll describe how they do it. Right. So recall is essentially kind of like a search engine of your use of a computer. So the example that I've heard a couple of journalists talk about is that if the other day you went to a website that was really interesting about whales, and you can't remember what the website was, and you can't look in your history, you can instead ask Copilot to look at your past and find the website, right? Because it's been observing what you're doing. But the way they do that is by taking a screenshot of your computer screen every 3 seconds, right? Now, of course, that's really interesting, right? Like, how else would it be able to do that, right? So it's going to have to look at your stuff somehow. But that means that somewhere out in the cloud, there's going to be this massive database of past screenshots.
It's local though. They are saving it locally.
Is it locally?
Yeah, it's saved locally.
Well, then on your computer, there's a database of screenshots, right? And man, the creepy factor there is 9.9, and I get what Microsoft's doing. They're trying to stay relevant in a new computing era, but again, those kind of things don't pass the smell test.
My security list on Mastodon, and then some of my other, folks I'm following on the other socials, have just been blowing up with this. So here's the best article so far. It's from Double Pulsar. Again, not one of my normal reads. The headline is How the New Microsoft Recall Feature Fundamentally Undermines Windows Security. And I'll just say at the outset, I have definitely regarded Microsoft as the evil empire before. I think they've done some good changes, embracing, multi-platform functionality for Office, and I think they've made some wise pivots, in their investment in OpenAI. I think has been pretty wise, but this is terrible. This is like, let's just ramp up the surveillance state to maximum and make it the default for everybody, and then give the hackers on the dark web everything they could possibly want. What this article by Kevin Beaumont in Double Pulsar says is that fundamentally one of the biggest risks that we all have is getting our devices compromised by what he calls info stealer malware. And those info stealer malwares are part of ransomware, and they are already going for passwords that people have saved locally, not in the cloud, but locally on their machines. And so while somebody may think this sounds like a great idea, there are so many instances of malware, of again what they're calling info stealer malware on Windows PCs. And yes, Microsoft has tools to catch these, and other third parties do, but they are all over the place. And so this article is saying that if you have this active on your machine, number one, you're just not going to have any privacy at all, because if you were going to open an incognito window, if you use Tor, whatever, like every single thing, it's literally like there's a body cam, and you're going to have your own personal, data android from Star Trek standing next to you, recording every single thing that you do. And I don't know that you're going to be able to delete any of that. It's just all recorded. But then it's even worse, because you are going to have a large number of hackers that are going to get all of access to all of that. And so they're going to literally get your entire digital life. So I predict that this is a real misstep for Microsoft, and that they're going to walk this back. I am shocked that they brought this forward, especially when we have so much talk about privacy. I mean, yes, solving that problem of, oh man, I know I saw that website. What was it? I mean, I don't remember what the title of your session was, but you did some session about bear trapping, 15 years ago or something like that at one of the Montana conferences that we were at together. And I still use Wakelet and other things, and sometimes my own search history to be able to find things and make sure that I'm going to get stuff later. So that is a real problem and a real need that we have. But this is, I think, a huge abuse of privacy. And given the security climate that we have today, it just seems like an absolute misstep on Microsoft's part.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. And I do feel like that they are absolutely well, and again, I get wanting to be the market leader here, and to be clear, the practical function of that is pretty extraordinary, right? But you mentioned surveillance capitalism, right? Like, this is a tool of surveillance capitalism. I'd also note too, imagine for a moment an employer turning this on and getting access to what you're doing, right? Like, there's already a lot of people that think that, the super tracker stuff that exists in Office right now, which, that data can be turned on corporate instances to track. I mean, that's going to lead to that being very abused. And if your boss can virtually look over your shoulder 8 hours a day, the micromanaging, and then imagine attaching AI to the top of that so that it can use that thinking to identify, problematic activity based on a category. Yeah, that's absolutely terrifying to me.
And I guess I'll throw this in, because businesses can arguably say that they have an interest in being able to know every keystroke that employee X is doing on their device.
Yeah.
And we've talked before about the importance and value of, having your own device to be able to do your own stuff.
Yeah.
Bossware, I think, isn't there a phrase for that?
Yeah.
There's stuff that monitors kids when they're taking tests and in college and even in K-12, but there's definite software that's being used by companies to monitor employees. And I know that during the pandemic, of course, there's all kinds of stories of abuse and people who are being paid for hours of work that are not doing the work. And then the company is able to find out, hey, look, you're, playing games or whatever else. There's a market for this. So make no mistake, there are people that will be excited about this. And the business surveillance side of this, if it's your corporate machine, if it's the one your school gives you, you may not have a choice. And so if this doesn't get walked back by Microsoft, I mean, the power that this gives IT, and then potentially the hackers that get your machine, it really is extraordinary. So I am sure we're going to see EFF push back in a huge way against this. I would expect Apple. I wonder if they'll even at WWDC take this on, because they're, positioning in the market of, we are the privacy protection company. I think they're going to have a field day with this. So it's just, this is really big, and it'll be important to watch. And maybe it's another reason to thankfully, hey, I got a Mac, I got a Chromebook. I don't know. Not to say there's not surveillance going on with those things, and companies can do all sorts of things with devices. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have, as IT directors and admins, the ability to have some insight into where our boxes are physically located, and some insight into what they're doing. But most people are not going to like the idea of a body cam, with an Android, sitting there in front of them all the time, recording everything they're doing. And that is sort of what this is.
Well,
okay.
And in our, sorry, I'll just one with a quick thing, and then we'll, go to the third topic for the night. And in this very sour era, with lots of debates about public education, the last thing I'd want to see is, this stuff turned on for teachers, so that we can, and students for that matter, that, I get that we already kind of do that because there is a lot of surveillance software that is used in context of computer labs and with student devices. But I just, it really rubs me the very wrong way. And I just don't think that, I think in the end, we have to figure out a way to trust each other. And, trust but verify is a thing too. But it's got some culturally very troubling implications.
Oh, where does the time go? Sadly, we have really about 10 minutes. We haven't jumped into the top of our AI articles. Where would you like to start? How do you want to tackle whatever we have time for up here?
Well, a lot of this stuff is pretty evergreen to next week, but now I got to think about. I'm not going to be available next week. So evergreen for 2 weeks from now. I do want to mention the OpenAI one, because they are now offering a new model, which is they call it 4O. O as in like the letter O, and
for Omni is what I'm calling it. So,
yeah. And I will say that it's immediately noticeably better for me. So that's a really interesting piece. I want to mention two things, and then I want to pivot to education. They also released a Mac desktop app that is amazing. It is so simple and smart. It essentially allows you to bring up a window with 2 clicks on your keyboard. It's option spacebar, and you can talk to ChatGPT from this little pop-up window, or you can press the little attachment icon, and one of the things it will do is take a screenshot. So right now I'm going to take a screenshot, and in this case, I'm going to take a screenshot of our StreamYard studio, and it has inserted that in the prompt, and I could say something like, hey, explain to me what's going on here, and it pops it up into ChatGPT, the app. And a few moments later, it tells me this image appears to be a screenshot from the live broadcast of the EdTech Situation Room podcast, specifically episode number 327. The podcast seems to be discussing educational technology topics as indicated by the title. In the screenshot, there are two individuals in the call, Wes Fryer from Charlotte, North Carolina, and Jason Neiffer from Missoula, Montana. Both individuals participating in the show, and the interface shows that they are live, indicating the duration of the broadcast, 52 minutes and 51 seconds based on the time of the screenshot. And that is amazing, right? Like, and I will also tell you that I was in a discussion earlier this week that involved look at a form. And while we were in kind of a lull in the action where we were working through kind of a thought exercise utilizing a template, I uploaded a copy of the current work on to ChatGPT and asked it to analyze, and then asked it a couple of questions based on that. And it did an extraordinarily good job of not only understanding what it was looking at, but also giving me an indication that it could help me fill in the rest of it, right? And then proceed to answer questions. And that integrating these at the operating system level, which is obviously Microsoft's goal, but also appears to be OpenAI's goal. We'll see what Apple announces at the Worldwide Developer Conference next month. But and it's also what Google or Google Chromebook Pluses are about, is system level integration. It's both terrifying and extraordinarily mind-blowing what these tools can suddenly do.
And yeah, I think what we're moving to is just transparency, right? Just like there's so many different aspects of technology, like ubiquitous, high-speed internet. We just take it for granted. It's the oxygen we breathe. We have access to it typically at work and at home, and now even in the car, pretty much wherever we go. And except we're in a probably very rural part of Montana. I'm sure there's areas where 5G is not great, but that's where we're headed with AI. And again, thinking with the educational lens or the educational hat on, I absolutely think that we need to continue to play with these tools. As we think about summer professional development, all of us need to be engaged in some kind of, at the minimum, play date type experiences. I am going to go ahead, starting in June, I'm going to do a monthly online play date and face-to-face play date. And in part, this is selfish for myself. I need to make sure that I'm playing more with these tools. Thanks to you, Dr. Neifer. My students and I played with some of those music creation tools, which are really amazing, and just doing that. But we've got the image, creation tools, the writing, and like you said, being able to bring live data, and then it could be video. There are so many things about this that are mind blowing, and this is for people who are working in this pretty regularly. It's just, it's exciting. There's definitely an empowering side to this, but I think we have a responsibility as educators to embrace the learning about this. Like this, to me, like I've of course always said, it's not optional to participate in the digital economy, and I've known a bunch of teachers through the years that have tried to sort of wanted to just opt out of technology, but I do not think opting out of AI is a choice for literacy by teachers today. And so anyway, thinking about summer professional development, maybe we should even do that, Jason, in an upcoming show. We should talk about where we're getting some of our best learning about AI and where we could point people to, free or commercial or whatever, podcast resources. Where are we learning and staying abreast of this? Who's helping us out?
And I will say that other than Hard Fork, I have not found a great AI podcast yet. Hard Fork is the best in class by far, actually. Yeah. And I've listened to probably 24 or so different titles now. And there is a lot of the kind of like side hustle, bro, make $1 million a month, ChatGPT kind of crew, that there's a lot of those out there. And I have zero interest in that. But yeah, I think that's a great idea. And, Wes is going to offer some face-to-face opportunities. We're bringing in some pretty great speakers for Innovation Runs Through It, which is the conference that my organization hosts at the University of Montana in July, innovationrunsthroughit.com. And one of the things that I really want to focus on is that there needs to be some time, structured play with these tools. And, part of that structured play is just having people around. They don't need to be experts. They just need to be, curious, working together to, say, oh my gosh, how great this is. The one other thing I do want to talk about in regards to education, ChatGPT 4, this new model is available now for free. And so right. I do have a new account, I do have a free account that I utilize to look at what it looks like for free. And I logged in just now to take a look at what it looked like. And it doesn't do like image generation like DALL-E does. It doesn't right now seem to have access to the custom GPTs, although my understanding is that's coming soon to the free version. You can access custom GPTs. And
you can't create them yourself, but you can access them from the store that others have created.
And I just did my actually the search is so much better. I did my standard, because I've done this 100 times in the last year as a demo, write a biography of Jason Neiffer. And, a year ago, those were pretty terrible. And the one I just wrote for me did utilize search. It did Bing search, and then looked at 4 different websites: the Montana Academy website, the North Coast Council for Computer Education website, the Virtual Learning Leadership Alliance, the University of Montana website, and it wrote a pretty accurate biology. And
biography.
What did I say?
I thought you said biology, but maybe.
Oh, I might have. Yeah. It's been a long week back in the States. So yeah. I remember teachers saying things like, well, it's not teachers, naysayers is what I should say, because it went well beyond naysayer teachers. Well, the free version is terrible and our students only won't pay for it. Well, first of all, students do pay for that kind of stuff. But more importantly, that doesn't matter anymore, because as it turns out, you can do everything now with free ChatGPT, including uploading stuff, which you couldn't with 3.5.
But fewer interactions and quicker to say, sorry, you're going to have to wait 2 hours or whatever.
Well, and to be honest, even if I were a heavy content creator or someone that was working in a lot of digital stuff, get free Claude, get free Gemini, get free ChatGPT. I think you could do a good percentage of your work that you might use. And I'm talking about legitimate work, not like write my dissertation for me, but, check my sources, rewrite this to make it clearer.
Be my brainstorming partner. Help me,
partner. Yeah. Like there's just no reason. And
multiple accounts. A lot of us have got multiple Google accounts. So, one Google account is not working. I don't know if they're checking your IP address, but, use another account. So,
yep, totally.
Okay, well, I'm going to encourage everybody, because we're going to have to do our Geeks of the Week, to check out the links that we did not get. Again, those are at edtechsr.com/links. If you don't subscribe to our Substack, please do, because in addition to getting a link to the show and the links that are in the show, we also put all the links that we didn't talk about, and there are just some fantastic links, but we're going to have to push those back for 2 weeks, and there's going to be new articles. So anyway, I would definitely encourage you to check those out. But Dr. Neiffer, it does say we have been going for 62 minutes. So anything you'd like to do before Geek of the Weeking?
No.
Geeking of the Week.
Yeah, we'll need to talk about when we're back in 2 weeks. But yeah, we're all good. Let's geek it.
All right. What's your Logitech Geek of the Week?
Well, I think I might have shared this, like the concept of it earlier, but I had the opportunity to install it when I was traveling, and it's pretty great. If you have a modern-ish Logitech mouse, and in this case, I am using an MX Master. This is a 9-10-year-old Logitech mouse that you can buy these used for a song on eBay. And you can download the Options Plus software and program all the buttons. Well, one of the buttons they have now is an AI prompt builder. And so, and it works with a lot of their older mice, which is awesome. But basically, you can set up 2 buttons. One of them opens up the prompt builder, and it comes up with things like recipes. So it's kind of like using Text Expander, but it is focused on generative AI. So, for example, I can select text in a browser, use the magic button, the AI button on the mouse, and then it brings up a couple of options, including rephrase the following text. I want the length to be short and concise, or bullet count, or word count, or none. I can also change the tone: informal, professional, academic, playful, none. I can do it with emails. I can do it with summaries. I can do it with replies for social media posts. It's pretty sweet. And then you can program another button and log in to ChatGPT, your free or your not free account, and then it just brings up a ChatGPT window over the top of everything. So it's kind of does what that OpenAI app does, but on Windows and Macs. And more importantly, it's free and probably works if you have a relatively recent, 8 to 10-year-old Logitech mouse.
Awesome. Mine is kind of a funny one, but it's related to a serious one. This is the link to the 1978 remix of Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, that my neighbors and I in Lubbock, Texas recorded, and my mother recorded on a Super 8 camera. And I was just glad that Google didn't take down the John Williams original soundtrack that I put behind it. It's about like 6 minutes. So I shared that with my students because I was trying to humorously establish that I've been studying to be a Jedi for my entire life. And I was sharing email Jedi tricks. So the other link is a 31-minute video. It's actually a recording from class of my screen, where I'm giving kids basically 10 different tricks to try to have inbox zero and manage their email. Probably 4 years ago, I guess, it was in 2019, I recorded 2 different videos. One of them's got like 33,000 views, and the other was not quite as popular, called just like Gmail Basics 1 and 2. And I used to require that kids watch these and learn about this. But the one thing, last thing I'll say about it is, I almost wrote my dissertation on lecture capture, lecture casting software. This was more of a thing years ago with Zoom and whatnot. But this idea that you could just, press a button, a professor or instructor could just go in, press a button, and then everything would be captured, video, screen, all of this. At our NC Ties conference, I started experimenting with just the screen recording feature built into Mac OS Command-Shift-5, and then recording using the built-in mic and the screen. How did that do? And it turns out it does pretty well. Now, if you are giving a 45-minute or 60-minute lecture, that's going to be way over a gigabyte in size. I think this video might have been about a gigabyte. But anyway, that was just a screen capture of a lesson. And, if not something I'm going to want to do every day, but that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's super great.
Where can folks find you when you're not here, blessing us with your presence?
AIcentrist.com. And I'm still working. I had this, big broad goal of just revamping that website on vacation, as I'm zipping through Japan on the Shinkansen bullet train. That did not happen. I did get to eat the best sushi of my life. So I'm going to call that a win. But otherwise, find me on AIcentrist.com.
I think you should ask ChatGPT Omni to help you with that, Dr. Knifer, and give you some suggestions about how maybe you could throw some content on there. You can find me at westfryer.com, and lots of links to connect with me there. So we are the EdTech Situation Room. Usually Wednesday nights, we end up having to take a few nights off, and we will be taking next week off as well. It happens. But hey, the price is right, and you can subscribe to us on any of your free podcasting platforms where you subscribe. You can also find us on YouTube. We encourage you to follow us on Facebook, and we are also on Mastodon. So you can find those links at edtechsr.com. So until next time, we encourage you to stay safe, stay savvy, keep playing with AI, and we'll hope to see you next time, either live or offline, whatever, on the EdTech Situation Room. Good night, everybody.